Alright. So tell me, what would you do? I personally find it very difficult to be an individual in today's world. I find that there are endless opportunities to opt out of individuality. That it's so much easier to simply be an anonymous facet of the collective. I was once chatting with a really vivacious and pleasant, charming young woman who had said that I was too much of an individual. At some point I had crossed over a threshold, and that I was no longer an individual within the accepted circumference of individuality, but that I had gone beyond the pale, that I was beyond the perimeter of acceptability. And I said to her, isn't it fascinating that in the United States we all apparently and purportedly esteem individuality, but only up to a certain point. And if you go beyond that point and you are unrecognizable, you therefore challenge even the religion of individuality, which, when phrased thus, is no individuality at all, when it takes on a kind of semblance of a religious ideology where we're devoted to the cult of individuality, but only within a certain sphere. And I said, isn't it fascinating that we would, as individuals, or thinking that we're individuals, we would be afraid of people who truly strike us as individuals. Anyways, when I took my dog to the vet today, I had an encounter with a veterinarian, and my dog is a black lab named Monday, and has been feeling like really lethargic and just out of it, and I was worried, so I took Monday to the vet. And after the veterinarian checked him out and everything like that, we were making small talk in the lobby. I was kind of looking at the magazines a little bit while the veterinarian was talking. And for whatever reason, my mind skipped to an episode earlier in the week where I had got out of my car, it was raining, I opened up the umbrella, and the little, you know how every umbrella has those spines, those little spindles that hold the umbrella in place, and there's always a metal tip, and that tip had slightly scratched the side of my car, and immediately made me think of how if it were someone else's car and they were parked next to me, they might get out and really give me a lot of attitude and pissiness because I had nicked their car with a little aluminum point of my umbrella. And then we would get in a large argument, and all of the potential intimacy between human beings would be completely compromised, sabotaged, and eliminated in that moment because of a tiny pinprick on the side of their car. And I was just musing aloud to the veterinarian about this, about how objects become preeminent, and intimacy and subjectivity and all that stuff between human beings recedes to a distant second, and how amazing that is. And I was reflecting upon intimacy and how intimacy is shared presence between human beings. And the veterinarian just looked at me. It was a look I will never forget. It was a look with a mixture of wonder, sorrow, and condescension, and a dash of arrogance. And he said to me, nicely, firmly, but with this kind of tone of superiority. He's like, I can help you with that. I was like, you can help me with the car? That happened like a week ago. He said, no, I can help you with that. What? That, thinking about these kind of things. What kind of things? These aren't things that normal people think about. You're obviously suffering from some kind of condition where you think about random and immaterial and irrelevant things, and I can help you with that. Help me with the way that I think? No, it's not so much that. It's just that I have a serum that I've been developing that can perhaps be of use to you, beneficial to you, if you want to know more. And I'm like, okay, what kind of serum are we talking about here, and how would that affect the way that I think? And so I just said, well, what do you think my problem is? And he just looked me in the eye, real matter-of-factly, somewhat philosophically, I suppose. You have a problem with individuality. You're too individual. You're too much. You don't fit in at all. And I have something for that. Right? So here's a veterinarian supposed to take care of my dog offering me a serum from my individuality. So naturally I'm just like, well, given my mind and my temperament, I immediately want to go there with him and say, like, well, what are you doing with a serum for individuality when you're a veterinarian? So I asked him about that, and it's something that he does on the side in his basement in a laboratory-like, chemistry-like setup, kind of like Breaking Bad or something, although I only watched 3 episodes of that. Why is individuality a problem? I asked him. Why should it be a problem that I'm reflecting upon the deficit of intimacy in this world as occasioned by my umbrella nicking the side of another person's car? He's like, well, how does that benefit the world? That kind of thinking. How does it benefit you? How's it practical? How do you become a better person thinking about things like that? How do you contribute to society? And I said to him, there's such a thing as objective truth and subjective truth, and objective truth has to deal with facts and knowledge and things of that nature, and a subjective truth is basically just the truth of who I am. It's not something that I possess, it's something that I am. He's like, okay. That's more of the same. Where is that perspective going to get you? And you can see that I was dealing with something here that actually I'm quite familiar with, as I get into these conversations quite a bit, where a very quote-unquote practical and objective person really wants to annihilate the intrinsic value of my subjectivity because it doesn't have any apparent value vis-a-vis their objective perspective on reality, quote-unquote objective perspective, which is subjective through and through and through, which is subjective. So I said, yeah, let's do this. Gave me his card. I gave him a call. and we're going to meet. I'm going to sit down on some table in his lab. I'm going to take a look at his serums. Now, one thing that's particularly troubling is that I somewhat believe this guy. He said that I'm suffering from some kind of disease of the mind, where I will never be of any use to society because I try to compound complexity. I try to magnify intricacy. I try to enhance intimacy. And there's really no place for people like me anymore. That I'm obsolete. That in a few decades there will be no one else like me on the planet. So why put myself through the suffering of having to be an individual? Right? Why not just be part of the collective? Why not succumb to the herd? And not have thoughts or contemplation that is beyond the perimeter of the acceptable. So what would you do if you had a problem like me? If your problem was that you were too individual, that no matter how hard you tried, you could not fit into the straitjacket that was given to you at birth in the society of omnipresent domestication, what would you do? Would you take the serum? You know what that serum is. It's to put you down. It's to put me down. Once I take that serum, you can forget all about it. It'll be like induced amnesia. I will be drawn back into the fold like a tractor beam. And all my troubles will be over. Because it's fucking cold out there. And here I'll just be gladly invited back to the fire, where I can prop up my feet, drink a glass of wine, maybe a wonderful book, a classic, Charles Dickens. And I can think very comfortable thoughts about the ideal of individuality. I can think about individuality. And I can think about things like freedom. And all these great ideas. And I can laugh and I can chuckle. Oh, freedom. Individuality. Do you remember when? And maybe I'll invite this veterinarian over, and he can pull up a chair next to the fire. We can drink wine together, read books, and talk about the good old days when we were actually individuals and we were far outside of the circumference. Because the truth of the matter is, he didn't invent the serum. No. He's part of the avant-garde. The avant-garde that is penetrating its way into the future and eliminating individuals as it goes. Because individuals are obviously an encumbrance. Individuals provide resistance to the collective. Individuals have a taste of freedom. Individuals can be completely in touch with their heart, and therefore they're very hard to control. Think about that. Why would controlling an individual be impossible if that individual was completely in touch with their heart? Because the heart, with a capital H. The capital H heart cannot be controlled. The capital H heart opposes control. It's the opposite of control. The opposite of control is the heart. The opposite of control is the individual. Not the religion of individuality. The religion of individuality is a farce. It is a panacea for the collective. The individual is so much deeper than the religion of individuality. So what would you do? Would you remain an individual? Would you swallow the serum and become a part of the cult of individuality? The cult of individuality, otherwise known as the collective. Where is that serum? What is that serum? How do we drink it?